I come bearing an update on my One Piece journey. I know a lot of you have been asking for this because I have not released a One Piece video in a couple of months now. So let me explain. And I've talked about this in the Discord and in a couple of random videos briefly, so some of you may already know. But essentially what happened is I've been reading One Piece for the first time, right? We started a few months back, I mean maybe 6 months back at this point. Time makes no sense to me anymore. Because I wanted to get caught up and I wanted to experience, this story that I heard so much about. I had tried to get into the anime a few different times, but I just never could because of pacing, and I just never attempted the manga. So, like I mentioned a few months back, I did, and I really enjoyed the manga. So as I've completed each arc, I've been releasing a video sharing my thoughts on it. And those started like maybe 10-minute videos, but toward the end, we were getting close to like hour-long videos on each arc. But what happened is after my Water 7 Enies Lobby arc review, I ran into some copyright issues. And in an abundance of precaution at that point, I privated all of my One Piece videos because I didn't want to take any risks. So for those of you wondering, like, where did the One Piece videos go? That's where they went. I just didn't want to risk, losing the channel or just running into any issues. So privated those videos and decided to take a break to figure out how I was going to handle this moving forward. Because if I do continue to make the arc reviews, I got to do them in a completely new way that, has no risk of getting copyright or in trouble. Also, coincidentally, right around the same time, JJK announced that it was ending. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to pause on One Piece for now since I have to figure out a new way to do it. We're going to focus on JJK since it's about to end. And I just kind of went on a little One Piece hiatus of my own. Now, as you guys know, Hunter x Hunter came right back the moment JJK ended, so that kind of immediately occupied the space that JJK was occupying in my free time window. That's not to say I'm not interested in One Piece anymore. I actually really enjoy One Piece, and I'm excited to get back into it. The main hesitation is just how am I going to handle this moving forward? So that's what I wanted to ask you guys. And basically, I see two options here. When I dive back into One Piece, I could either just kind of push through and try to get caught up as soon as possible and not spend the time after each arc making the in-depth arc review. And that's not to say I wouldn't do anything, but maybe instead just make like a quick 2 to 5 minute video explaining my thoughts on the arc, what I liked, what I disliked, any theories, and all that jazz, as opposed to the hour-long in-depth, yap sesh where I point to panels and all that jazz, which is what got me in trouble with the copyright in the first place. So I could either just do that, go try to get caught up quickly, still release smaller videos, or could still do what I was doing, but we're just going to have to experiment with how to handle that without running to any copyright issues, which I also don't know if the more in-depth videos make sense, because the reason they were so long is because I did point to specific panels and talk about things. And so I don't know if I can make those videos without showing the panels. It might be kind of weird. Anyway, so I'm leaning now towards just going through, getting caught up and making the shorter videos, because then I won't have to worry about copyright and I'll be caught up sooner. But I do want y'all's opinion. And just to be clear, if I do go the get caught up faster route, that doesn't mean I'm going to like read One Piece any less carefully or, skim through it or anything. I'll still read it with the same intention and, looking for cool things to theorize about. So don't worry about that. But anyway, that's where we're at with this. So I'm still in Thriller Bark. I have just not really progressed since the copyright stuff. But now that JJK is over, Hunter x Hunter is kind of in the swing of things. I'm also dabbling into Kagurabachi, so I've got that as well working. But I'm about to have space to get back into this. So all that being said, I'd like to know what you guys would prefer, what you think. But as of right now, I am leaning towards just not doing those as in-depth arc reviews so that we can just get back on this sooner. So let me know your thoughts. And then before we exit One Piece territory for now, I actually got a question about this. So massive shout out to Nitro for sending this in, and y'all can pause to read the entire thing if you'd like, but what he is essentially asking is how did I feel about the introduction of Gear 2 and Gear 3, which are the transformations of Luffy's that I have seen so far. So let's dive into it. Okay, so first, just a refresher on my background when it comes to One Piece, and that is I dove in almost completely blind. Yes, there are a few things that I have an awareness of because almost everyone has an awareness of, like Gear 5, for example. So I knew that Luffy at some point would get Gear 5, but other than that, I didn't know anything about his transformations. Obviously, intuitively, I could assume that there's a Gear 1, 2, 3, and 4, but other than that, just base level assumption, I knew nothing about these things. So when I got to see him bust out Gear 2 for the first time, this was really cool because it was completely unexpected. Like, there really was no mention or buildup, and I don't mean that in a negative way, or like we see him specifically training to like unlock a transformation, so like you kind of know it's coming, sort of thing. And I actually really love that they did it this way because it was a nice surprise. It's like, oh shit, Luffy has a whole nother level he's about to clock it to because he needs to. So I really enjoyed this. Now, in terms of pure like spectacle, not that exciting, right? And I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way, but like citing back to Naruto, which Nitro mentioned, every time he transformed into the Nine Tails, that was hype as hell. But Nitro specifically referenced power scaling in a way that he didn't enjoy the Naruto transformations. And I don't want to put any words in Nitro's mouth, I'm not saying I know he liked Naruto, so don't get me wrong, but those how I feel about power scaling. I think it's very fun in a speculative sense, but when it gets like when people just dilute down to like the smallest fractions and try to like make hard canonical statements about it, that's where I'm just like backing out entirely. So I understand the qualms with like, having such an insane source of power like the nine-tailed fox and having that be like the system that, enacts all of your transformations. So that aside, where it's got insane spectacle, I too prefer something like this, especially because it was born, at least of my understanding where I'm at in the series, all of Luffy's own intuition and creativity. Like his rubber body, he found a way to take that to the next level by like, physically enhancing all of his physical stats. Like it was a specific application that he then named Gear 2, which again, may be wrong in terms of like the actual lore, but that's how I understand it in Thriller Bark currently. So I thought that was all really cool, and I loved that it was just his own creative interpretation that led to this. And I also love that it has its downsides, just like Gear 3 does down here, which I also really enjoyed that these were revealed so close back to back because, typical manga fashion, it's usually huge bounds of time between big transformations like this. And granted, the Gear 3 that we see in the Lucci fight is just like singular attacks. And I don't know if Gear 3 ever evolves into like an actual form or it's always just him like blowing up a portion of his body like this. But either way, it was cool to have them revealed so close together because I can't remember exactly, but after this moment, there's like a tease to Gear 3. I believe when Luffy is trying to get through like a big steel door as they're chasing down Robin. And then like we don't actually get to see it in action. We just see the aftermath where he's like a little tiny chibi version of Luffy because it used all his stamina. So I was like, whoa, like we just had Gear 2 and they're already teasing like the next evolution. So I loved the way they played that as well. So to bring this discussion back around and tie a bow on it, what I'll say is I really enjoy the system by which Luffy is having these transformations, that it's born of his own ingenuity regarding his specific power. But the one negative I'll say is that there's not too much spectacle yet. And maybe that's not fair because I'm reading the manga versus seeing an anime, which I'm sure they do a good job of hyping it up. But when you compare it to something like the Nine Tails transformations or going Super Saiyan, for example, Gear 1 and 2 just don't pack too much of that like whoa. So, I'm not really taking points away because I know Gear 5 is more of something in that direction, but that would be my one, negative so far. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one. Nitro, thank you so much for the support, man. And y'all be sure to let me know in the comments what your preference would be for how I handle One Piece moving forward. But as always, thank you for watching.